Please refer page number 1 and 2 of the sample you have downloaded and the page number 5 and 6 of the guidance documents before you start. In this section, you need to provide a clear and concise description of your chosen organization. If you cannot disclose the name of your organization, you can use false details, but everything else needs to be factual. The description of the organization should be detailed enough to give the examiner a clear image of your organization. If you provide an unclear or incomplete description, this could affect the marking of the risk assessment. Once you complete stage 1, use a checklist provided to ensure that you have covered the minimum required criteria. As a minimum, you need to include the name of the organization, site location, number of employees worked, a general description of the organization which must include the products manufactured or services provided, and the type of activities undertaken and the shift patterns worked. A description of the area to be included in the risk assessment. Example, who is having day-to-day responsibility of health and safety in the organization? If you feel that nothing is relevant here, you do not need to include this in your assessment. In the last part of this stage, you need to outline how you carried out the risk assessment. As a minimum, you need to include the source of information you have consulted, whom you spoke to, and how the assets and controls were identified. You may also include anything else that is relevant to the completion of this risk assessment. Now, stage 2 is the risk assessment. This part needs to be done carefully as many learners make mistakes in this section. You need to identify 10 different hazards from 5 different hazard categories. Please see the page number 7 to 9 of the guidance document and page number 3 to 12 of the downloaded sample before you start this section. When you identify 10 hazards, please ensure that you are not identifying the similar hazards. In the column 1, mention the hazard and hazard category. In the column 2, you mention who may be harmed and how. In column 3, you mention what you are already doing to control the hazards. Column 4, you need to mention what further controls that might be needed. You can see here that column 3 and 4 works together. If you are already doing enough to control the risk, that means there will be a lot of controls listed in column 3. There will be very less or nothing in column 4. You might even note that no further action is required in column 4. On the other hand, we have very few controls in place. Column 3 will contain very little and column 4 will contain a lot more. Both these scenarios are fine because they are realistic. Column 5, mention what the timescales are for completion of each action. The role of person responsible for completing each action to be mentioned in column 6. Stage 3 of the assessment is to prioritize your actions and justify your selection. Once you have completed the risk assessment, which includes allocating actions, you must pick the 3 highest priority or most urgent actions needing attention. These actions can be associated with the same or different hazard or hazard categories. The important thing is that they need to be your highest priorities for action. You must give a justification of why you think these are the highest priority or the most urgent actions. Your justification must include moral, legal, and financial arguments for all actions. Your legal arguments must be based on the ILO conventions and recommendations and code of practice. You can include the country-specific legislation, but this will not be marked. You have to mention the likelihood and severity of injury, ill health, or harm occurring. You will need to typically consider the type of injury, ill health, or harm likely to be seen, the number of workers at risk, how often the activity is carried out, and how widespread the risk is. After that, mention how effective each action is likely to be in controlling the risk. Here, you should describe the intended impact of each action, justification of timescale for completion of each action, and whether you think the action is fully controlled the risk. The stage 4 of the assessment is to complete the review, communicate, and check. Set a realistic review date for the risk assessment and say why you have chosen the review date. Indicate how the findings of the risk assessment are to be communicated, so it's a verbal or written, and the methods to be used. Example, email or notice boards. And who needs to know about the information. Indicate how you will follow up on the risk assessment to check that actions have been carried out. Once you complete the risk assessment, use the downloaded checklist to ensure that you are complied with the minimum criteria. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell button.